So I'm Scott Holmes. I'm the pilot of Outlaw, and I thought we should do an update on what we've done over the winter. So once it got back from China, we took the whole panel out, we rebuilt everything. The airspeed and altimeter were due for overhauls. They weren't quite working right. The altimeter was jumping. So we decided to upgrade with this mini EFIS. So to turn the airplane on, turn the battery on, avionics on, and now we've got everything alive. So what we've got here is we've got our little G meter on this side. And this tells us how many G's we're pulling. And basically the only time we look at it is to prove that the airplane has hit its 6G pull for Reno, which is a requirement to race. I never really look at it other than that. Here we've got the mini EFIS. We've got airspeed on one side, the artificial horizon in the middle, and then altimeter on the right, and then also a ball in the middle, which is going to be kind of nice. And then to adjust the altimeter setting, you just turn the knob. So it's really bright, really easy to see, and it's all electronic, so it doesn't require many overhauls or that kind of thing. Over here, we've got the engine information system. It works the same old, same old. It's the same thing that's been in the airplane since I got it. Basically, I leave it on this screen. We've got RPM, oil temperature, and oil pressure. That's it. Down here's the compass. We need it by law. I never look at it. GPS is in the middle. So this airplane's very small, so it's hard to fly with a map. You can't really do that. It's hard to fly with ForeFlight too because it's a hands-on airplane. It's hard to take your hands off and keep it going straight. So using this thing in the middle, I can actually see where I am on the map and just fly off this thing, which is actually makes it really nice. It's good for situational awareness too. The other really nice thing I'm looking forward to is we put this little tiny radio in. The previous radio, as of last season, was just a handheld that fit in the wing root. And then it was all kind of wired in, and there's wires going everywhere in the wing root and back out again, and it was kind of a tangled mess. I also was having trouble hearing properly with spark plug noise. So with this thing now, it's so far been very clear. I haven't flown it yet, but I'm looking forward to it because it moves all that handheld out of there. Start button's right here. We had an issue where the propeller would not start well. If you look at the videos in China, we had like the slowest starting propeller ever. And what we found was the starter contactor was corroded. It looked like it had come out of a shipwreck. So we just replaced that too. Now the prop turns over, no problem at all. The last thing here is the fuel gauge, and it's the same that it's always been. It works well, it's simple, and it's got no parts, so it can never fail. What else? I've got my ELT alarm right here. There's an alarm and there's a little button in there, so if we have an issue and have to put it down in the field, push that button. Headset plugs over here, they're out of the way. They kind of loop around this tube here and then come up to my helmet. Breakers across the bottom. It's really nice that we have a proper bus bar now. Before it was just a screw with many hoop connectors coming off of it, and it was so busy, like we were asking for a failure. So now I've got a proper brass bus bar. It's all been wired correctly, and it's straightforward and simple. To start the airplane, so I'll just turn everything off again. The first thing I do is I turn the battery on. The next thing I do is I turn both the mags on. And then after that, it's simply 2 pumps with the throttle, which is down here. Hit the start button, or mixture forward too, and it starts up. Once it's started, you can turn the avionics on. Everything else comes alive again and functional. And then alternator here, and then also I've got a fuel boost for the boost pump right here, which you can hear it. So that is the new panel for this year. I'll leave that on. So the goal here was to get rid of all those steam gauges. They're expensive to maintain and expensive to keep accurate. We fly in controlled airspace here, so I was starting to struggle with altimeters. I'd go through an altimeter a year. With this thing, I believe that we've got the problem solved. And then also with the new panel, everything is straight again. We don't have an issue with that carbon fiber sticker falling off. It's going to get powder coated. It's just bare for flight test right now. We're going to take it all out and spray it properly, paint it properly. And everything's straight, functional, fits good, and there's no more chafing, no issues. So far I'm really happy with it. Cool. Okay, so I thought I'd give you a quick winter maintenance update, looking over kind of everything, not just the panel. What we decided was with Air Race E starting, most of the firewall forward on this airplane has been reworked already. Most of it's fairly new, like within the last 3 years. So there's nothing that was really critical that had to be done. What was critical though was the wiring of this airplane I was never very happy with. We always have, most of the breakdowns that happen with this thing have been wiring related. And it was quite a rat's nest, so we were having trouble figuring out which wire goes where. So what we did is we decided to completely rewire it. So we took every single wire out with the exception of a couple CHT and EGT probe wires, and we completely rebuilt the panel from scratch. We cut a new sheet of aluminum, cut it the way we wanted, replaced the steam gauges with electronic ones, put a proper radio in it, and then wired it properly. Most of the work that we've done this winter, you're gonna see here this year. So behind here, what we did, so this is, it's not perfect, so don't look too close. We put a proper bus bar in and a proper ground block. And that's at the bottom here. You can see all the breakers across there, and you can see the brass bus bars across the bottom. On this side here, right beside it, we've got the ground bus. And then it's a common ground for everything, which is good wiring practice. As well, all the switches here have proper wiring that comes off to run in this main harness, power harness across the bottom. We've got some of it going to the ground, some of it going to the main bus, or the bus bars and the breakers. On top of that, we tried to keep all the radio wiring and the communication wiring, which is all shielded, separate. So it's running out of a separate harness, which comes across the top away from the power down there. So that should give us the best chance at no noise. Other than that, everything else is pretty much where it's always been, location-wise, except you'll notice this instrument here is new. Previously, we had an altimeter on this side where this radio box is now, and a proper airspeed indicator here. Both are out now, and they've both been replaced with, we put the radio on this side, and then the mini EFIS on this side. And so that way it gets rid of all the steam gauge issues with calibration and overhauls and bad gauges, and solves that issue. One thing I've noticed on this airplane, some of my friends have too, is I've been going through an altimeter a year. So we buy those $450 cheap ones. But the problem is, I think it's from the high ascent and descent rates in these things. The gauge, the needle would bounce, and it would bounce plus or minus 500 feet, and it'd become really hard to read. And because they're so cheap, nobody overhauls them. They're cheaper just to buy a new one. We've been going through about one a year to keep it accurate. Flying around here at Villeneuve, it's busy quite a bit. Lots of students, and it's a controlled airport. So what that means is it's important that we have a proper reading altimeter so that we can report at the proper height. The nice thing about going electronic is it solves all those mechanical problems, I hope. And it gives me a little bit more information as well, GPS data, that kind of thing. So I'm quite looking forward to trying it. We've got it installed now. It's powered up, it's ready to go. So it'll be interesting to see how it holds up in this airplane with the vibration and the G and everything. So that was a big one this year. Other things that we did was we took some of the steel tubes in. Some of the tubes had some holes cut in them. A lot of the parts that we could take out of the airplane and put back in. All those pieces, we welded over the holes, polished them flush and smooth again, and then took them over and got them repowder coated. The ones you'll notice are these two crossbars have been repowder coated. Obviously they're underneath the fairing, the fiberglass fairing, but you'll notice in here it's really nice and clear and smooth and looks much nicer than the tubing underneath it. On top of that, we rebuilt all of the rods. Now it's hard to see, they're all in the tail here. Maybe we can do another video later. Actually, why don't I grab a screwdriver and I'll show you all those right now. So now I've got the seat open, you can clearly see the control rods in here. We decided that, well, the rods were actually, these three particularly, were not very well built. They're safe because they've been flying for 500 hours, but they needed a good look at. So what we did is we took these two down and removed all the paint and had a good look at them and decided that they're only aileron rods and they're acceptable. They've lasted this long. They should be fine. So we had them repowder coated with new rod ends. So they're good, no problem. However, this pitch rod here was not looking so pretty. And so in pitch in this airplane, there's no trim. So if you have a pitch rod failure, you can't just trim out of it like any other airplane. So we decided that it was a good idea to replace all the rod ends in the pitch system, just because they were old and grody and grimy. Replace them with new, go to the bigger 5/16 rods, like the plans call for, and then also re-weld new proper rods with rod ends. So We looked around for somebody that could weld it. I had these, or I ground the rods down and tacked them in place. The problem is no professional aircraft welder in the area was interested in doing such small volume work, and so we made the call, okay, I'm going to do it. So I welded this pitch rod on both sides. Per the book, by the standard, no problem. But because it's pitch, we wanted to look at it real close. So we actually took it down to Calgary and had it x-rayed. And well, actually we NDT'd it every way we could. We mag particled it, learned a whole bunch about that process. I think it's called magnaflux. We x-rayed it. I learned a whole bunch about that process, made a whole bunch of x-rays. And so the rod is clear. We actually UT'd it as well, which is ultrasonic to look for thickness and that kind of thing. So it's good. It passed every test, 0 defects. And so we decided it's safe enough to fly, sent it to the powder coater. They took care of it for us, and now it's in the airplane. One thing I learned is I actually calculated wrong when I built the rod. I made it slightly too long. So they're actually on the short end right now, and we can't really adjust it much shorter. The nice thing is to go longer means that I get more up elevator throw, which is actually one thing that this airplane is lacking. The elevator goes down way more than it goes up. And so if we lengthened these rods, it would adjust where the neutral point on the stick is and give us more up elevator, which works much better for ground run-ups and so on. Right now with full back stick and high power, I fly the tail. That's right on the edge of a prop strike. So by adjusting that, I think it will be much better. So that's kind of the inside of the airplane. I don't know how much you can see in the video, but the rods, all the control rods in the cassette are there. You can see there's the aileron rods moving, and then the pitch rod right there, and so you can kind of see the mechanism in these racers. And pretty much every racer out there looks the same. Way back there, you can see the ELT and the ELT antenna, and the GPS antenna right here, and then the battery is there for weight and balance reasons. This airplane has absolutely ideal CG. So that's kind of the inside of this airplane. You can see how nice the fabric is. The seat belts clip in here in these tubing clusters, and that works okay. And then that's pretty much it back there. The last thing that we wanted to do is in this airplane, it was always rigged in a way that one aileron was slightly high. So if you look down this line here, you can see it's slightly out of alignment. So in a racing airplane, it's really important that it's rigged straight. To rig an airplane like this straight, you have to adjust the rear spar brackets to adjust the twist of the wing, and then the aileron rods to neutralize the ailerons on both sides. This airplane, since I got it, this side was always slightly high when it was flying. And it's just been one of the things that I've known about, wanted to fix it for a long time, but haven't gotten to it. So this year when we rebuilt the rods and replaced the rod ends, that was the ideal time to redo the rigging. So right now we've set the ailerons at straight neutral. So I know with one aileron out and it flying straight, it'll probably roll left on me on first flight. I won't know that until I fly it, just slightly. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the rear spar connection rod end out, and we're gonna shave a little bit of it off or add washers where necessary, put it back in, re-rig the aileron, hopefully it'll fly straight. So this way, what's gonna happen is we're gonna pick up some speed this year, we hope. Don't know how much, but hopefully it's a lot. In both pitch and roll, re-rig completely. And then that way, when we fly, the ailerons will be perfectly neutral. It will not be a situation where one's up, one's down for straight flight. And then that way, there's actually quite a lot of drag being produced by the controls being out. This way, I'm guessing it'll be, if I had to guess, 3 knots. We'll see.